Here we go. Esther chapter 2, the greatest or the first beauty pageant there ever was. Who's ready? Who's been reading Esther? I'm excited because this is a really cool story that often we don't always see both sides. So I'm going to throw something at you and I'd love to hear what you think. So we've got Esther, who's living in this strange town with her uncle. We also have the king who just kicked the queen out. And so the king is kind of feeling sad about it. But his boys tell him, hey, don't feel sad. You just go get you another queen. And he goes and he's like, well, that's pretty smart. Really, they're like all the young maidens of the town. He calls them the virgins because they're not married, essentially. And so he collects all of them and they go into this big, long process. It's 12 months. And it's essentially what we're calling the beauty pageant. So they have 12 months to prepare themselves to spend one night with the king. One night. So they have all this work that's going to culminate in one night. We see that Esther is finding favor. It says in Esther 2:15, Esther was winning favor in the eyes of all who saw her. So she is, obviously God's hand is on her. And we see that even in this early parts of her story. And putting her to the first of the line and making her be the best that she can be. But here's what happens with this one night. So there's 12 months that lead up to it. And there's one night that two things are going to happen. One of two things will happen. You either king likes you and you become queen, or he's like, yeah, no, I'm done with you. That's a big deal. So you have all these girls competing for this one major position. And so there's only one winner. So I want to look at like this darker side of Esther's story. Like what happens to the other people? Because in our own lives, there's going to be winners and there's going to be losers. And how we respond to that is going to be huge in our own life because we can't all be Esthers. We're not all going to be queen. So what happens to the other girls? Well, this is super tragic in that they become essentially a mistress to the king. Like they're called concubines. They live in another house outside of the palace. Like they don't even get to live in the palace. And basically they don't get a lot of stuff. Like their lives are restricted. It's kind of boring. Like they essentially have to wait for the king to say, I want to see this person. And most of the time he doesn't. So they just live a life there. They don't get to get married. They don't have kids. They don't have a family of their own. And it's really tragic because it's all because the king was essentially greedy and is like, I want all these people to myself. So there is a dark side to this story, a side that we don't often see and hear about. I want you to hear today is that yes, Esther won because God placed favor on her, but there's a flip side to every story. And so when you see people who are winning in your own life and you're like, oh my gosh, they have it all together, there's probably a flip side to that that we don't get to see. We don't know what's going on in their lives. We don't know what's happened to the other people in their lives. And so with this story that's really cool about Esther winning favor with the king and becoming queen, I want us to see these other people who aren't seen and maybe take in our own lives a little bit of grace when we're looking at people who are in what we consider winning in the world's eyes, and realizing there's a flip side to that. And how we respond to the flip side is what God is doing in our own lives. That is how we are learning and growing as we follow Jesus. And so, yes, the Esther story is cool about her becoming queen, and it's phenomenal, the choices that she makes. But that flip side is just as needed as Esther's story. Because honestly, we're probably all on the flip side. We're all in the story that is not as it appears to be. And so how we choose to live in that story, where we're not rich and famous, we're not winning all the time, we're not what culture, what today's society says as the perfect person, that's where we find Jesus and really where things happen and where God works in our lives. And so today, when you think about Esther's story, maybe look at the other people in her story and think about the other people in your own lives. Like, what is God doing in your life right now as you live out maybe a not so famous story? My story ain't famous, I'll tell you that. But it's still important because I am following hard after Jesus, and God loves me the same way He loves you. Know that you are loved, even if your story is not famous. Your beauty is not unfounded, like Esther. Tragedy might be happening all around you. God loves you just the way you are, and He's created you that way. And not all of us have big stories, but all of our stories are valuable and make up the big picture. And so today I just want you to know how much God loves you. So very much. I can't say it enough. Like, God completely loves you exactly the way you are. And if you want to talk to me about that, feel free to send me a message, let me know, or find somebody who you can talk to, because you matter. Your life is valuable today. Maybe not what you expected, but still a unique part of Esther's story. So go out today and find somebody who needs to know how much God loves them.